when the gruesome discovery of a young girl's remains was made along a trail in the forest near the San Carlos Apache Reservation. It would horrify and enrage her tribal community and the entire state of Arizona. The investigation into her death would reveal a long pattern of neglect and systemic failures. Who was this innocent victim, and will the monster who stole her life ever be found and brought to justice? Hello, and welcome to Shades of Murder. I am your host, Alita Caldwell. In this podcast, I discuss cases of murder from around the world and throughout history, attempting to unravel the layers of darkness that help make humans into monsters. Please be forewarned that each episode contains specific and at times very graphic and disturbing details of the case. This show is not intended for all audiences, and listener discretion is strongly advised. If you enjoy the show and want to support it, please help spread the podcast. It only takes a moment to follow, rate on Apple or Spotify, and leave a review. Thank you for listening. On February 14th, 2025, along a trail off Highway 60 in the Tonto National Forest near Globe, Arizona, a group of hikers came across two large construction-type trash bags. Upon closer inspection, they found the bags to be suspicious-looking and decided it was best to contact the police. The officers were unprepared for the horrific, gruesome scene. Inside one of the bags was a girl's decapitated head and torso. Inside the second trash bag were her legs. The preliminary autopsy results indicated that the young girl had visible face and head trauma. There were no identifiable items belonging to the victim, such as an identification card, clothing, or jewelry. The forensic pathologist would later declare the cause of death to be homicidal violence with blunt head trauma. However, due to the dismemberment, it was impossible to determine the girl's exact cause of death. 5 days after the body was found, the Bureau of Indian Affairs contacted Mesa, Arizona police. They suspected the remains of their Jane Doe were missing 14-year-old Emily Pike, a girl who had disappeared from a group home in Mesa, Arizona, over 100 miles away in the Phoenix metropolitan area. Finding out that your daughter had been killed would undoubtedly be the most shocking and unbearably painful news a parent, much less a mother, can ever hear. It would be beyond difficult and traumatic enough to receive a call or see a police officer approaching your home when your child has gone missing. But Emily Pike's mother didn't hear about her daughter's death in either case. Instead of being told respectfully and compassionately, she discovered on social media that her 14-year-old child had been brutally slaughtered and disposed of like trash on a highway in Globe near the San Carlos Apache Reservation. This mother literally learned of her daughter's tragic and horrifying death by seeing photos of garbage bags that held Emily's remains. These photos were released by an individual or multiple people who worked for the Gila County Sheriff's Department. What little integrity and poor moral character must this person or persons have to not consider how these grotesque and disturbing images would forever impact the victim's loved ones? The police never contacted Emily's mother, Steph Dosella. She was the one who called them after viewing these horrific images online that may have involved her missing daughter's dismembered body. The teenage girl had been missing for 18 days, but an alert had never been issued for her after she ran away from a group home in Mesa. Once again, the institutions had failed this young girl and her family. The investigation into her disappearance and death would reveal a pattern of systemic deficiencies and outright failures. A lack of communication and issues of complicated jurisdiction between the tribal, county, and state systems had led to this teenage girl's untimely and most grisly demise. The neglect and failure to protect this young girl had begun years earlier. The San Carlos Apache tribe, the Arizona Department of Child Safety, the group home Sacred Journey in Mesa, and to some extent her own family, all played a role in the horror that unfolded. On May 16, 2011, Emily Pike was born, one of 3 children to mother Steph Dosella. She and her family lived in Peridot, Arizona, named for the beautiful green mineral peridot, which is found in the basalt flows near the area. Peridot is a tiny, unincorporated community in Gila County, located on the San Carlos Apache Reservation. In 2010, the population was 1,350 residents. The San Carlos Apache Reservation was established for the San Carlos Apache tribe on December 14, 1872. One of 4 settlements that the U.S. government had forced the Apache people to divide and relocate to. It was designated Camp San Carlos at the junction between the Gila and San Carlos rivers. Initially, it was the headquarters for the Indian Agency, but this would soon change and become a prison for the tribe. 2 years after the establishment of the camp, the Department of the Interior launched what it called a program of removal. This imprisoned all Western Apaches at San Carlos. By 1875, more than 4,000 Apache, Mojave, Yavapai, and Chiricahua Apaches were shoved into the San Carlos camp, which consisted of only 40 acres. These horrific, deplorable living conditions would exist for many years before they were freed to return to their homelands. It became known as Hell's 40 acres. Then in 1924, the government constructed Coolidge Dam, which robbed the tribe of their precious water sources, once again forcing them to relocate. Over the next decade, the tribe would become a tribal federal corporation, which granted some collaborative power, including over natural resources and areas of economic development. But still, the United States government extended its powers over the tribe and continued to reduce the size of its land 6 different times. Specifically, each time a mineral or other precious resource was located, they would resize the reservation so they could steal the desired area from the tribe. The San Carlos Apache are known for their pride, resilience, and their refusal to negotiate with the government. Although the tribe has since established a casino and some other lucrative businesses, the people's lives have not seen much benefit. The San Carlos Apache Reservation is the 3rd largest in the state of Arizona, encompassing 1.8 million acres of land. The population is around 10,300 people, but the tribal members face some of the highest rates of poverty in the nation. The median household income is below $25,000, which equates to 74% of the people being at or twice below the federal poverty line. Their unemployment rate on the reservation is as high as 37%. For contextual comparison, the national unemployment rate is approximately 4%, and the same applies to the state of Arizona. A lack of education exacerbates the problem, with almost 1 in 4 having less than a 9th grade education. It has also been acknowledged and addressed that organized crime, in particular drug traffickers, have taken great advantage over the vast lands that exist amongst the reservations, making them prime targets for users. The leading cause of death for adolescents between the ages of 15 and 19 is intentional self-harm or suicide by hanging or strangulation. For young adults aged 20 to 44, the leading cause of death is vehicle-related accidents. And for middle-aged indigenous people, it is alcohol-related liver disease. Similar to many communities that struggle with poverty, unemployment, mental health issues, and substance abuse, violent crime is extremely rampant. The crime rate on the San Carlos Apache Reservation is 10 times the national average. You may be curious why I am sharing this information with you. First, it is Native American Heritage Month. It is important to discuss what the San Carlos Apache tribe, like all tribes in the United States, was forced to endure and the struggles and battles they continue to face thanks to the invasion, resettlement, and genocide induced by colonialism. Second, it is crucial to understand the environment and culture in which Emily was raised, as well as the numerous challenges she and her family faced. Emily Pike's parents had been separated for many years. Her father was in and out of the criminal justice system throughout her young life and was incarcerated for an arson-related offense at the time of the events that unfolded. Her mother was unemployed and had long struggled with substance abuse. Along with her brother, mother, grandmother, aunts, and other unspecified relatives, as well as other possible tribal members, Emily lived in a rundown trailer on the reservation along a dirt path. The area was very unkept, with trash, broken glass, and overgrown shrubs. Her home was known for being chaotic and unreliable. There were plumbing issues, no electricity, and the roof was patched with tarps to prevent leaking. Despite all of these obstacles and not having an ideal living situation, Emily Pike was a vibrant, smart, and bubbly little girl, known for her beautiful, infectious smile. In 2023, the San Carlos Apache Police Department received a call from a remote part of the reservation. It was Emily Pike. She told them she had been raped. However, when law enforcement arrived, no one came with any background in handling such a sensitive crime, especially of a sexual nature. Instead, the Tribal Fish and Game Department showed up. No one provided Emily Pike with the support and resources she desperately needed after such a violent and traumatic event. Once it was learned that it was a family member who had assaulted the young girl, Emily was placed in the care of San Carlos Apache Social Services. Initially, the man was arrested, but was released soon after without facing any charges. Some believe that members of Emily's family did not want to press charges, but the Bureau of Indian Affairs claimed there was insufficient evidence to support the charges. Emily was initially held at the Tribal Social Services group home on the reservation, but it lacked the resources and support necessary for the young girl. She was soon forced to leave her family behind on the reservation. 12-year-old Emily Pike was pulled away from her tribe, everything and everyone she knew and loved, and was sent to live in a residential group home in Mesa, which was over 100 miles away from the San Carlos Apache Reservation. What may have appeared to be a step to shield the girl from further harm only led her to be isolated, traumatized, and re-victimized. The trauma Emily Pike experienced from being assaulted, not supported by some of her own family members, who sided with the assailant, and then thrown into a group home with no one she knew, wore the young girl down. Emily Pike began to struggle with depression and suicidal ideation, attempting to kill herself on at least one reported incident. Emily hated living at the group home and escaped the residence on multiple occasions. She missed her family deeply and the simple, cherished things on the reservation that she no longer had in the city, like her grandmother's acorn soup and homemade tortillas. But she wasn't given a voice in where she lived, and her family had restrictions on their contact with her, particularly her mother. Her mother understood the best she could, given the assault that had happened and her struggle with poverty and addiction, But she was under the impression that her daughter was safe and being well cared for at the group home, Sacred Journey. On September 11th, 2023, Emily, along with another girl from the group home, disappeared. After a staff member gave them their medication before bed, which I have no idea what that entailed, but the two girls ended up escaping from the window. A Mesa police officer located the girls safe at the nearby Kleinman Park. When asked why they ran away, the girls claimed they had been forced to scrub the walls, baseboards, windowsill, and tiles on their hands and knees for hours. One of the girls swore to the officer that if she were taken back there, she would just run away again, and that she would rather go to jail. Both girls were promptly returned to the group home Sacred Journey. It was reported by a staff member that one of the girls had a cell phone that had been confiscated the night before. Only 9 days after this incident, Emily Pike left the facility once again. A Mesa police officer found her walking in the neighborhood along the canal around 10 o'clock that night. This time, Emily told him how she hated how the staff argued with the girls there and she didn't want to return. She also said to the officer, and I quote, "I would rather stay with my grandma instead. I want to speak to my mom. No one understands me or is going to help me. I'm not going to go to that fucking group home. I hate it there." After this second incident of running away from the group home, Sacred Journey ordered that Emily be sent to Mind 24/7, which is a mental health facility, before she would be allowed to return. Then about a month later on Halloween night, a staff member contacted the police saying that Emily had run away again. But less than 3 hours later, she returned. However, a staff member overheard her tell another girl that she had taken something that was laced with a drug. But the staff didn't see her condition warranting any emergency treatment, so they allegedly kept an eye on her throughout the night. On November 8th, 2023, a little before 10 a.m., Emily Pike was discovered in a master bedroom closet with a shoestring placed around her neck, which was tied to the doorknob. Emily was transferred to Oasis Behavioral Health Treatment Facility, where she remained for over a year. It is unknown what kind of treatment or therapy she was given during her stay. She remained in the treatment facility until right before Thanksgiving, when she was picked up from the hospital by her aunt and uncle. Together, they traveled through Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah, meeting relatives along the way. Everything seemed normal, happy, and Emily was enjoying the trip, but only 2 days later, her behavior changed. There was a disagreement, and Emily ended up running away. When an officer located her, she refused to leave with her aunt and uncle. She told them she wanted to kill herself and that she would see them all in hell. Emily was hospitalized and then sent back to Arizona, where she was placed in a secure behavioral health facility. Emily Pike would be returned to the Sacred Journey group home in Mesa. The last time Emily Pike was seen or heard from anyone who knew her was on January 27th, 2025. One of the girls at the group home informed staff members that they saw Emily crawl out the window. She was described as wearing a pink and gray striped long-sleeve shirt. When Emily went missing from the group home, the most basic information given to the police was inaccurate. First, the staff member, Kathy Montano, stated that Emily was 15 years old instead of her actual age of 14. When the police dispatcher inquired as to whether the child had any history of mental illness or was a potential risk of harm to herself or others, the woman replied no. Emily had documented history of her stay at psychiatric hospitals and behavioral health facilities, where she resided for over a year before returning to the group home. And when asked to spell her name, she said Emiley. When a police officer arrived at the group home at 8:30 on the night Emily Pike disappeared, the employee stated that they had noticed the gate was open and the screen window had been kicked out. According to Emily's roommate, she claimed that she was going to meet up with a boy she had met recently at a store while looking at records. It was reported that Emily Pike was taking medication for her mental health and behavioral issues, but the exact kind or name of medication she was on has never been specified. This is also very ironic considering how the staff member who called police to inform them she had gone missing claimed that she didn't have any mental health concerns. A witness last saw the 14-year-old girl walking near Mesa Drive and McKellips Road. A statewide missing person bulletin was issued 2 days after she was last seen. The group home Sacred Journey reported Emily missing immediately, and the San Carlos Apache Tribe's social services were informed about her disappearance the day after. However, the caseworker assigned to Emily didn't believe it was an emergency, as they were aware that she had run away from the group home on multiple occasions and had always returned safely in the past. It would be an entire week before the San Carlos Apache Social Services contacted Emily's family to inform them she had vanished. On February 2, 2025, the group home received a call claiming that Emily was with her mother on the reservation. But at the time it was left, they neglected to check it. 4 days later, a Facebook post made the same claim. However, this was quickly dispelled once police spoke with Emily Pike's mother. The next day, the group home finally listened to the voicemail. On February 11th, the police listened to the voicemail, which again confirmed by Emily's mother to be untrue. Why would someone claim that she was with her mother on the reservation multiple times? Was it the person who had murdered her, and they wanted to interfere with the investigation by making the police and the group home believe Emily was safe back there? The police contacted her mother toward the end of that week in February. Emily Pike's mother told law enforcement that she thought her daughter was at the group home still, and she had not seen or heard from her. Something doesn't add up about this situation, especially considering how close the proximity was to the reservation where Emily's remains were found. Emily Pike's mother, Steph Dusella, believes that she was so homesick that she likely was trying to make her way back to the reservation. Did Emily hitchhike or get a ride with someone she had possibly met in Mesa up to the reservation? Was her trip met with a violent altercation with a stranger, or did she cross paths with someone she knew, possibly even the relative who had sexually assaulted her? This is all pure speculation, but the factors of this case don't make much sense. On March 18th, a collaborative task force of law enforcement agencies was established. The group included the Gila County Sheriff's Office, the San Carlos Apache Police Department, the Mesa Police Department, the FBI, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs. On March 24th, the San Carlos Apache Tribe urged the Arizona legislature to pass HB 2281, which would establish the long-awaited Missing Indigenous Person Alert System, also known as the Turquoise Alert. Legislation was created before Emily Pike went missing and was found murdered. Similar to an Amber Alert issued by the Department of Public Safety, this kind of alert is specifically for when an Indigenous person disappears. In her memory, it was renamed Emily's Law. The following day, chairperson of the Arizona Senate Health and Human Services Committee, Karine Werner, called for a thorough investigation into the DCS group home regulations. On May 14, several different agencies came together at the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee to discuss with Arizona lawmakers this crisis, in addition to the various factors, specifically the lack of action and poor communication that led to Emily Pike's death. The DCS, local and state law enforcement officials, leaders of the San Carlos Apache Tribe, and Emily's family members were all in attendance. Emily's uncle, Elred Pike, was in attendance at the hearing and addressed the total breakdown of communication. He told them how the tribe, the state, and the federal agencies had all failed his niece. Emily's death could have been prevented if it weren't for how these systems each let her down. Emily Pike was neglected by the system from the day she contacted the tribal police about being raped to when she disappeared, the last and final time. During the hearing, San Carlos Apache Police Chief Elliot Sneezy responded to inquiries about why the Fish and Game Department had responded to a sexual assault call that day instead of one of his trained officers. He stated that the police were really busy that day Emily Pike had called, and that Fish and Game were experts in locating people in the most desolate and remote areas on the reservation. Although this excuse was really just that, an inexcusable error in judgment, it couldn't be argued that the tribal police were spread very thin. In fact, along this 1.8 million acre reservation, there were only 22 police officers expected to handle crime. 22 officers patrolling 1.8 million acres of land. The director of Tribal Social Services would later convey to the committee that cases of sexual assault are very challenging to prosecute when the family members protect the accused. According to Terry Ross, the director, when an assault occurs within the family, its members almost always support the perpetrator and refuse to press charges. As a result, social services are left with very little choice but to remove the child from the home. When Emily Pike was sent to the group home in Mesa, no one was ever informed as to why she was sent there. This background was critical to her caregiver's understanding of her mood and behavior, but the DCS failed to communicate this pertinent information. At the time Emily was residing at Sacred Journey Group Home, which was a DCS licensed, she was in the custody of the tribe, not the state. When the Department of Children's Services became aware of Emily's disappearance, since she was in the custody of the tribe and not them, there were no records of her family contacts nor her friends. In fact, they didn't even have a photo of Emily Pike. The reporting requirements under Arizona law for a missing child don't apply to a child who is in the custody of a tribe. The DCS felt that their hands were tied due to these jurisdiction issues, and nothing was done to inform the family that she had gone missing, much less perform a thorough search for the young girl. But Sacred Journey Group Home was expected to contact DCS regarding Emily Pike's disappearance, even though she was not in their custody. The previous year, Arizona had witnessed a huge influx of runaways reported from the Department of Children's Services group homes. In response, an amended state law was signed that required that family, friends, and the school be contacted within 24 hours of a child's disappearance. The law also stipulated that the family and tribe of the missing child must be contacted via phone and in written communication. However, tribal sovereignty means that state laws don't apply to tribes because the state lacks the authority to pass laws that dictate or control them. At the time, the Arizona DCS had what was referred to as a memoranda of agreement, which would comply with such laws for 4 Arizona tribes, but the San Carlos Apache tribe was not one of them. As such, a child living on tribal lands or who is in custody or enrolled by the tribe has exclusive jurisdiction over what happens to the child. This undoubtedly stems from a long history of the traumatic and unjust forced removal of indigenous children from their families on reservations. Many of the speakers spoke out against the way jurisdiction took priority over locating a vulnerable missing child. No matter who the child is, they must be immediately considered missing, not a runaway. Many of the speakers declared that the most innocent and most vulnerable must be protected. These obstacles don't go away, though, simply because officials or community members want jurisdiction not to matter. They do this for many reasons, primarily to give Native tribes autonomy and authority or sovereignty on their lands. Many agencies and individuals within them don't want to interfere with tribal jurisdiction for significant reasons. Group homes are expected to report a missing child immediately, though. It is an ongoing issue that teens placed in group homes are frequent runaways who often end up disappearing over the weekend and just resurface the next week. Due to this fact, some have recommended that these requirements be amended for teens in group homes who disappear directly after being told they can't go somewhere, specifically if a staff member knows where they may have fled. Everyone at the committee agreed that communication is essential to prevent more children from going missing, especially those residing in group homes. There must be an open, honest flow of information about the child's background and about their culture between tribal social services and the group homes, in addition to an agreement between the tribe and the DCS. So when a child goes missing, everyone involved has important information to help find them. After Emily Pike's disappearance and murder, the San Carlos Apache tribe requested that an investigation be made into the Sacred Journey group home. They also want state leaders to enact stricter regulations on these state-licensed residential group homes. Investigators would soon learn that over the past 3 years, more than 30 children had disappeared from there. According to Elizabeth Morales, the CEO and home operator of Sacred Journey, all 30 children had been safely located. However, there is one particular girl, a 17-year-old named Veronica Cruz, who disappeared in May 2024. Now, according to Elizabeth Morales, the girl was located after a year and reunited with her family. But the Mesa Police Department never confirmed this to be true. What does this indicate about the manner in which this facility is being operated when this many young, vulnerable girls are running away? According to their LinkedIn profile, Sacred Journey Incorporated is a residential living home designed to provide 24-hour-a-day, 365 days a year, supervised care for children, specifically girls, ages 7 to 18 years of age. Sacred Journey Incorporated utilizes a holistic therapeutic approach to provide each child with a supportive, non-judgmental, culturally based experience so that each child can enhance and develop life skills for future survival once they return to their natural environment. Their mission statement says, "We believe that every child has a right to grow up in a secure, nurturing environment where they will receive caring and emotional support from a trusting adult who will instill a sense of hope and self-pride so that each child may grow to their fullest potential." The purpose and main goal of Sacred Journey Incorporated is to break the cycle of intergenerational abuse through strengthening children and their families. The CEO of Sacred Journey addressed the care of children at the facility, stating, "We go above and beyond. We're raising children and not just housing children. We're parenting children," Elizabeth Morales said. "I'm going to really take the time and energy to make sure that child is wrapped in services." What an absolute joke. This is the place that was forcing little girls to scrub their floors and walls on their hands and knees for hours at a time. This so-called wellness support center for young girls who didn't even know how to correctly spell Emily Pike's name, which, by the way, speaks volumes when their staff member doesn't know how to even spell one of the most common names in history accurately. Only one day after Emily Pike's remains were found, DCS launched its own investigation to the group home. It found that they weren't responsible, nor could they have prevented the tragedy that happened to Emily. According to a spokesperson for DCS, they stated to the media, "At this time, the department does not believe any action taken or not taken by the group home caused the terrible outcome in this case. We have opened a licensing inquiry to determine whether appropriate steps were taken by the group home during this incident." The DCS investigation concluded that it was in violation for failing to call the DCS hotline to report Emily Pike missing, as required by state policy. So in response, the Department of Children's Services instructed that they update their internal policies and ensure all staff members are properly trained on this procedure, regardless of what agency, whether it is state or tribe, have placed the child at the home. Really? Updating their handbook and training manual is the extent of change requested by Arizona DCS to this very sketchy, possibly abusive girls' group home. The real issue, though, is Arizona DCS and the tragic murder of Emily Pike and several other young, vulnerable children, which have led lawmakers and local news stations to initiate a deep look at the system and how it can be changed. Emily Pike is not the only murder case in recent years involving young, vulnerable children associated with the Arizona Department of Children's Services. In August of this year, the Arizona Department of Children's Services was faced with a $60 million wrongful death suit filed for the 2022 murder of 11-year-old Chesky Davis, who died from torture and starvation at the hands of his grandmother, Stephanie Davis, and her boyfriend, Tamis Descharnais. This lawsuit was filed in the name of his surviving 13-year-old younger brother, whose horrendous injuries, both physical and psychological, have left him with such severe cognitive disabilities, trauma, and suffering that he will need care for the rest of his life. Neither of these vicious perpetrators had legal custody of Chesky Davis or his younger brother, and in fact had abducted the children from their home in Minnesota. Despite multiple reports filed by 2 different schools in 2017 that said there were serious signs that the children were being abused, DCS didn't look into the allegations very seriously. The first incident involved scratches on Chesky's face and a bruise on his head. The second incident concerned his missing school and a severely blackened eye. The third allegation of abuse was made regarding his younger half-brother, whose head was discolored from his grandmother allegedly picking him up and throwing him down. The Arizona DCS investigated these 3 different claims of child abuse, and yet they decided there was insufficient evidence and left the children in the care of the grandmother. This sadistic grandmother, Stephanie Davis, would then pull the 2 boys out of school to evade authorities. In 2021, a hotel receptionist at Extended Stay America in Scottsdale, Arizona, observed the boys panhandling in the street during the intense summer heat, wearing long-sleeve shirts and pants. The 2 boys always had on baseball caps, their heads lowered, and their grandmother wouldn't allow them to speak. The woman called DCS, worried about the children's welfare, but they never returned her call. Then in 2022, the year Chesky Davis was killed, there was another report made citing possible child abuse. This is where Chesky and his younger brother lived out the last days of his life, being severely tortured. Yet DCS took no protective action. If only they had looked closer into who their legal guardians even were. They would have realized that these 2 little kids had been abducted from their mother years ago, and there had been an arrest warrant for their grandmother since 2016. Instead, the DCS dismissed these grievous signs of abuse and neglect, and these young boys were subjected to the most horrendous abuse and unspeakable torture for years, ending in the life of the eldest child. That there was a lack of a thorough investigation and not demands for reform of the Arizona Department of Children's Services after this heartbreaking and infuriating case makes no sense. It wasn't until Emily Pike's tragic and atrocious murder that lawmakers and community members began to demand accountability and change. Emily's case is one of 3 high-profile cases that involved young girls, which have finally ignited a deep probe into the DCS. Zariah Dodd, a pregnant 16-year-old who was in custody of the state, was murdered in a park in Phoenix in July of 2025. She had also run away from her group home in Surprise, Arizona. The 2 perpetrators of her death have since been arrested. The other child, Rebecca Baptiste, was a 10-year-old girl whose school had called DCS more than half a dozen times with claims of the child being abused at home. DCS never did anything about it. And once they believed they should look into the allegations closer, the family had moved. They had moved to a remote, isolated area in Arizona where they were living in a yurt. The little girl was found unresponsive, and she was taken to the emergency room where she died 3 days later on July 30th from severe abuse and malnutrition. Her father and his girlfriend have since been arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Several reforms have been proposed to prevent future tragedies like what happened to Emily, Rebecca, and Zariah. Critical information packets will be created for every child in a group home, including a current photograph, their history, and their family members. As part of a class action lawsuit 5 years ago against Arizona DCS, they had agreed to stop their over-reliance on placing children into group homes. They claim that although they have tried to find more foster homes for these kids, most of them are older and have complicated backgrounds and needs. After what happened to Emily Pike, you would expect a higher degree of investment, accountability, and due diligence on the part of DCS to keep children safe. Unfortunately, these examples, both before Emily Pike and afterward, show otherwise. Despite the heightened criticism and community outrage, nothing significant in the system appears to have changed. Local Phoenix news station ABC 15 launched DCS State of Failure to raise awareness of this escalating problem that has existed in the state for decades. They intend to reveal how the system has failed to protect countless children from neglect, abuse, and violence at the hands of their caretakers, whether it is their biological parents, foster, or a group home. It is an ongoing crisis that must be exposed for real reform to come. The research on the high risk of abuse and death of children in child protective services is deeply alarming. Children in foster care, which include group homes, are 42% more likely to die, regardless of their race or age, than children not in the system. An audit performed in 2019 revealed that states failed to report 34,800 missing foster children to either the police or the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. A report released by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children discovered that approximately 40% of missing foster children disappear on average 4 times while in the custody of the state. Several studies have shown that between 25% to 40% of foster kids have reported being victims of abuse or neglect while in state care. Research conducted on older children formerly in the system found that 27% of them were victims of sexual abuse. Foster kids in group homes face an even higher risk of being sexually abused than in alternative living situations. Some studies indicated that they were 28 times more likely to be sexually abused. Another study done on foster parents showed that they had committed 41% of the incidents of sexual abuse. It should come as no surprise that a very high number of children and adolescents in the foster care system become the most marginalized and vulnerable members of society. About 29% of homeless youth and young adults have experienced living in the foster care system. Black and Native American children are overrepresented in the system and comprise a disproportionate number of missing children in relation to their percentage in the population. There are currently 1,400 children in group homes in Arizona. As of October 2025, more than 90 foster kids have been reported as missing, runaways, or abducted. Not only was Emily Pike a vulnerable target, being a young girl in the child welfare system, but her Native American heritage placed her at an extremely high risk of becoming a victim of violence. Rates of violence occur on reservations at 10 times the rate of the national average outside the tribal lands. Although the studies vary, some research has indicated that indigenous girls and women are as high as 7 times more likely to be murdered than non-indigenous females. The homicide rate is on average 3 times higher than that of non-Hispanic white women, and murder is the 3rd highest cause of death for Native American and Alaskan Native females, both between the ages of 15 and 19 and 20 to 24. There are particular regions of the country where indigenous girls and women are at an even higher risk of becoming victims of murder. Across 11 counties in the United States, indigenous females face homicide rates that are more than 10 times the national average. There is also a significant disparity in the official records regarding the numbers who have gone missing. In 2016, the National Crime Information Center reported that 5,712 indigenous girls and women were missing. But according to the U.S. Department of Justice's website, there are only 116. That is an enormous difference that has never been formally addressed. In 2023, there were 5,800 indigenous females reported as missing, and 74% of them were children. On September 15, 2025, Emily Pike's father, Jensen Pike, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the Sacred Journey Group home for negligence. The 7-page complaint claims that the staff were negligent and failed to reasonably watch, supervise, care for, and protect Emily while in their care, blaming them for her wrongful death through their action or inaction. By staff members 1 to 5 that were hired, who have not been identified, were inexperienced, reckless, and negligent. However, in their response to the lawsuit, the Sacred Journey Group home facility claims that many agencies are to blame for Emily's murder, including him and her mother. In the lawsuit, they contended that Emily Pike's parents, Jensen Pike and Stephanie Dosella, are unfit, unresponsive, and neglectful. Sacred Journey also laid fault on the San Carlos Apache tribe, since they knowingly placed her in a non-secure, voluntary residential home, claiming that Emily Pike left the residential home of her own free will. This statement, if anything, paints Sacred Journey in a negative light, despite their flaws as parents, which certainly helped lead to the traumatic situations Emily Pike faced. When she was sent to the group home facility, it then became their responsibility, their job, to look after her and provide her with a safe and supportive home. How can you call a girl's home Sacred Journey and not help these girls overcome their trauma and show them the kindness and compassion that is needed to encourage them to be on a better, more positive path in their lives? Emily wasn't sent to the group home out of any wrongdoing of her own. She did nothing to deserve being treated and handled as if she were a bad kid, a troubled juvenile. She was a victim, a child victim of sexual assault, who was taken away from her family, away from the reservation, and tossed into the care of a facility that clearly was not fit to take care of her or any of these young, vulnerable girls. It has been reported that some of Emily Pike's relatives are not supportive of Jensen Pike's lawsuit. They believe it is outrageous and exploitative of her death, and that if there is any financial reward that should be received, it should be placed in a charity to honor his daughter or help locate her killer, rather than benefiting him, who was in prison when Emily went missing and was killed. The San Carlos Apache tribe is committed to finding Emily Pike's killer and has offered a $75,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction. The investigation is currently a collaborative effort made by the Gila County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, the San Carlos Apache Tribal Police Department, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, who are committed to solving Emily Pike's murder. The Gila County Sheriff's Office has been relatively tight-lipped about the case, stating that it remains open and active, but no information is available to release. A $200,000 reward has been offered by the FBI, leading to an arrest for the murder of Emily Pike. It can't be denied that this reward by the FBI is much larger than most, indicating that they are fully committed to solving her case. Why is it then that with all of this alleged law enforcement teamwork, her death still does not appear to be prioritized? Why is it that 9 months later, very little progress has been made on her case? And how can anyone explain, much less condone, how only a few weeks ago, another Apache girl was found murdered and a turquoise alert had never been issued? When 16-year-old Chalistia Tia Kolele, told her family she was going to stay at a friend's house. They didn't worry when they didn't see her for a few days. Then a few days turned into 10, and on October 27th, her family reported her missing to the White Mountain Apache police. But for some unknown and unjustifiable reason, they never issued a turquoise alert for the young girl. The FBI, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and the tribal police began a search for the missing child. On November 3rd, her remains were found in the Knott's Landing area in White River, Arizona, within a mile of her home on the reservation. It is unknown what information they received which led to her remains. After the discovery of the young girl's body, which had evidence of foul play, Arizona DCS addressed questions as to why a turquoise alert was never issued. They stated that without a formal request from the tribal police, they have no legal or operational authority to activate an alert. 16-year-old Celestia Kolele had been reported missing on 2 separate occasions in October 2024, with both having been closed after she was located. A little less than 2 weeks after her body was found, there was news of an arrest and her murder. According to the family, an agent from the BIA, or Bureau of Indian Affairs, visited them and informed them that they had someone in custody who was a minor and not directly associated with the family. However, the BIA released a statement to the press which conflicted with this information. They told the media that the homicide investigation was open and ongoing and that no arrests had been made. It is also interesting and bizarre that the FBI is allegedly not directly involved in Celestia Kolele's homicide investigation. Now, this makes no legal or logical sense because the FBI has shared jurisdiction in all cases of homicide that occur on federally recognized land. Under the federal law, they have primary jurisdiction over any major crimes and would work alongside the White River Mountain Apache Tribal Police and the BIA. The claim being made by some sources that the FBI is not working on Celestia Kolele's case appears to be incorrect information. However, if this is true, it only adds to the baffling questions and mystery surrounding her disappearance, death, and its subsequent investigation. And yet, there are no suspects or any leads in the brutal murder of Emily Pike? Keeping the case active and the community talking about Emily is the top priority for Emily's aunt, Carolyn Pike Bender, and her uncle, Elrin Park Jr. Emily's aunt and uncle adored her, and they miss her deeply. Her aunt, Carolyn Bender, confessed to how she cries herself to sleep some nights because she is so haunted by what happened to her young niece. Her uncle Elrin Pike has expressed the impact the entire tribe has felt after Emily's death. And I quote, "Everybody feels the pain, what happened to her. We just don't want her to be another statistic. Emily Pike's family does their best to hold on to hope and have patience waiting for answers. But 9 months after Emily's tragic death, there are few. No suspects have been identified. And although it is known that search warrants were served on the group home and other possible locations of interest, law enforcement hasn't shared any information with Emily Pike's family. As I have mentioned in previous episodes, I prefer to cover solved cases because I like to delve deeply into all aspects. When you don't know the legal outcome, much less even a suspect in a crime, this can be difficult, if not impossible, to do. But there are cases where I feel compelled to use my voice to spread awareness and help increase interest in solving them. Each case I cover matters to me, but there are some cases where I think, what if, just maybe? By sharing this unsolved homicide, it could trigger someone somewhere to come forward with what they know. This is especially true for cases of marginalized victims who don't receive the same national media coverage as other victims do. I decided it was time to cover Emily Pike's case. While doing research, I then read the news that this other young Apache girl, 6-year-old Chalistea Kolele, had been found deceased under suspicious circumstances. Her body had been discovered and the autopsy has determined she has been a victim of homicide. Emily's Law, also known as the Turquoise Alert, has since been passed in honor and memory of her to help prevent this kind of violence from happening to another innocent indigenous person. And yet somehow it was never issued when Chalistea Kolele disappeared. Once again, the system and these so-called preventative measures put in place have failed these children and their families. I was hoping that after 9 months following the horrific discovery of Emily Pike's remains and the bizarre and disturbing circumstances that surrounded her disappearance and death, that some kind of justice would have been found, or at least some answers. Unfortunately, there hasn't been much progress made in this investigation. Someone, either at the Sacred Journey group home or on the reservation, possibly both, knows something, but no one is talking. Emily can't be just another missing and murdered indigenous girl. Like her uncle said, she can't be another statistic. Emily Pike's family is still waiting for the truth to surface and for justice to arrive one day. If anyone has information that can help solve Emily Pike's murder, you can submit information or a tip in several ways. If you wish to remain anonymous, you can contact Silent Witness at 480-WITNESS. You can also contact the FBI's toll-free tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI. You can contact your local FBI office, the nearest American embassy or consulate, or submit online tips at tips.fbi.gov. Thank you so much for listening to the absolutely tragic, heartbreaking, and infuriating case of Emily Pike. May she rest in peace and justice be granted to her one day. For those of you who aren't already aware, I alone am Shades of Murder, and it's a true labor of love. I know there are countless true crime podcasts out there, and your support listening and following the show means the world to me. But I need your help to grow the podcast, and the best way you can do this is make sure you're following or subscribed, of course, and rate it, leave a review, and share the show with a friend. It's easy, free, and will only take a moment of your time. Each one of your voices and your support truly makes a difference. If you are on Spotify, underneath the title and cover art, there is a gear or 3 dots. You just click on that and you can rate from there. If you prefer to leave a rating and a review on Apple, you can simply scroll down the page of the show, select a rating, and then tap on Write a Review. Alternatively, you can leave reviews on the platforms Castbox, Podchaser, Audible, and through Amazon Music. Reviews don't have to be long or complicated. You can simply tell me what your favorite episode has been so far or what kind of cases you would like to hear more about. Sharing your thoughts and comments about the show with other potential listeners is the best way to support the show and help it grow. Your support means the world to me, and if you let me know you left a review, I would be absolutely thrilled to read it on the show. Your support means the world to me, and if you let me know you left a review, I would be thrilled to read it on the next episode. Again, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay safe and watch out for shades of murder happening in the streets, next door, especially inside your own home. Shades of Murder is created, researched, written, and edited by Alita Caldwell. Original music Stranger, composed by Stereo Code.